everyone. Today's webinar is titled FDA Drug Topics, the Bad Ad Program. My name is Dr. Kara Burke, a pharmacist and team leader in the Division of Drug Information. I would like to welcome you to this educational activity sponsored by the FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, Office of Communications, Division of Drug Information. We thank you and appreciate your patience as we continue to offer these CE courses completely virtual. If you experience any technical difficulties, please email us at ddiwebinars@fda.hhs.gov for direct assistance. Before I introduce our speaker, I have a few housekeeping remarks. All faculty are expected to use generic names. If trade names are used, those of several companies should be used rather than only that of a single supporting company. Unapproved use disclosure. CE faculty and speakers are required to disclose to the attendees when products or procedures being discussed are off-label, unlabeled, not FDA approved, and any limitations on the information that is presented. Disclosure. The faculties, planning committee members, and the FDA CE consultation and accreditation team have nothing to disclose. We hope you will enjoy meeting our presenter today. Lieutenant Commander Adesola Adejuwon earned her PharmD and MBA degrees from Howard University. Following graduation, she started working as an oncology pharmacist at MedStar Georgetown University Hospital, where she later became the lead oncology pharmacist. In 2015, Adesola joined the Division of Drug Information at FDA, where she worked as a drug information pharmacist, where among other assignments, she responded to multifaceted inquiries from consumers, healthcare providers, and drug industry. In 2017, she answered the call to active duty into the United States Public Health Service. Since her call to active duty and while stationed at the FDA, she has served intermittently on several deployments assisting with COVID-19 efforts. In 2019, Lieutenant Commander Adejuwon joined FDA's Office of Prescription Drug Promotion, where she serves as a regulatory review officer providing expert review of labeling and promotional materials for oncology drug products. Now, please give a warm online welcome to Lieutenant Commander Adesola Adejuwon.
Thank you for that introduction. We're very excited to be here today to share an opportunity for you to collaborate with FDA through the Bad Ad program. As mentioned earlier, my name is Adesola Adejuwon, and I am a regulatory review officer in the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA's Office of Prescription Drug Promotion, which we will call OPDP for short. I'm joining you today to talk about pharmaceutical industry advertising and promotion. Our group, OPDP, is the office within FDA that regulates prescription drug promotion, and we've created something called Bad Ad program, which I will talk to you about in a moment. But first, I want to discuss why you should care about prescription drug promotion. Whether we want to admit it or not, pharmaceutical promotion is everywhere. Many healthcare professionals believe they can avoid it, and many hospitals or offices have even gone so far as to ban sales representatives completely. But there's virtually no way to completely cut off the exposure to promotion. Even if it's simply while flipping through a medical journal or attending a major medical conference, pharmaceutical promotion is just inescapable. In fact, the pharmaceutical industry spent more than $23.5 billion in drug promotion in 2021, with almost $17 billion allocated to marketing to healthcare providers. So today I'm going to talk to you about how you can help make the content and the quality of prescription drug promotion better, and hopefully help curb drug promotion that misinforms or misleads healthcare professionals. So consider this an opportunity for you to contribute to the public health of many Americans. So the objectives for today's discussion includes the following, just as listed on the screen. First, I'll provide a brief overview of the FDA and its structure, and then I'll discuss the FDA's role in regulating prescription drug promotion. Specifically, we'll talk about OPDP and its responsibilities, and I'll also cover some of the basics of promotion. Then next, I'm going to talk about the role that healthcare professionals such as yourself can play in helping ensure that promotion is truthful and it's not misleading. And then we'll also talk about some of the common issues that we see in promotion and the things you can keep an eye out for when you're exposed to it. Also, I'm going to provide details on how to effectively report potentially false or misleading drug promotion to the FDA, of course, through the Bad Ad program. And then finally, I'm going to walk you through examples of violative marketing campaigns that we've discovered through the Bad Ad program and how we took action to stop them. So I just want to make sure, please note that although multiple prescription drugs may exist that treat the same or similar conditions as discussed, we will only be discussing specific prescription drugs related to the violative marketing campaigns. So essentially, our overall objectives are to provide you with a brief overview of prescription drug promotion. We're also going to help you recognize potentially false or misleading promotion and provide you with an easy way to report it to the FDA. So just to cover the basics, I want to remind everyone of what FDA's mission is. The FDA is a very large agency charged with protecting the public health by ensuring the safety, efficacy, and the security of human and veterinary drugs, biological products, medical devices, and also by ensuring the safety of our nation's food supply, cosmetics, and products that also emit radiation. Also, the FDA has the responsibility for regulating the manufacturing, marketing, and distribution of tobacco products, and to protect the public health and to reduce tobacco use by minors. Continuing on FDA's mission, it is also responsible for advancing the public health by helping to speed innovations that make medical products more effective, safer, and even more affordable, and also by helping the public get the accurate science-based information they need to use medical products and foods to maintain and improve their health. So I've often heard it said that FDA regulates 20 cents out of every consumer dollar, which is true and sort of kind of mind-blowing. So here on the slide here is the makeup of the FDA organization, which is made up of about 8 centers or offices depicted here. So we just want to orient you first with where OPDP lies within FDA. So OPDP is in the Office of Medical Policy, which is in the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. And for short, we will call that CDER. And you can see that with the orange box on the screen. So next, we're going to talk about OPDP's mission. Our mission at OPDP is first to protect the public health by helping to ensure prescription drug promotion is truthful, is balanced, and accurately communicated. Secondly, it is to help guard the public against false and misleading advertising and promotion through comprehensive surveillance, compliance, research, policy development, and also some of the educational programs that we do. I also discuss some of these in more detail a little bit later in the presentation. So where do we get our regulatory authority from? The Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, which for short is called FD&C Act, was enacted in 1938 and provides OPDP the authority to regulate the promotion of prescription drug products. The act, along with the implementing regulations, gives the FDA authority to help ensure that prescription drug promotion is first, not false or misleading. Secondly, that it includes a fair balance between efficacy and risk information, and that there's a fair balance between efficacy and risk information. And thirdly, helps reveal material facts about the product being promoted, including facts about consequences that may result from the use of the drug as suggested in the promotional communication. So in essence, the FD&C Act also gives FDA authority to create regulations to provide more specific details on how the law is to be followed. So continuing on OPDP's regulatory authority, one important regulation that I do want to point out is from the Code of Federal Regulations 314.81, which generally requires the submission of all promotional communications to the FDA at the time of initial dissemination or publication. So for example, if a company has created a new sales aid or a brochure to be used with healthcare professionals, it should be sent to us when it is first used. The same would apply for a journal advertisement or a website. It must be sent when the journal ad is published or when the website goes live. So I do want to note that products approved under accelerated approval regulations have different requirements, but I won't go into detail of that here. We'll talk about it later on in the presentation. So what's important to understand is that essentially majority of promotional materials that OPDPs are those that are already out in the public domain. This means that we may be seeing promotional materials for the first time at the same time that healthcare professionals or the public sees them. OPDP also does offer companies the opportunity to voluntarily submit promotional communications to our office for comments prior to use. For example, companies often voluntarily seek advice from OPDP when a new product is approved or before they release like a television ad, for instance. So essentially, they can submit proposed promotional materials to our office before they are disseminated or published, and then we review them and provide the company with comments. After receiving these comments, it's up to the company if they want to revise their materials prior to dissemination or publication. So while most companies do make revisions, they're actually not required to make edits based on OPDP's comments. So what does OPDP regulate? We regulate promotional communications made by companies for prescription drug products. This includes everything from sales aids to journal ads to TV commercials and drug websites. OPDP does not regulate the promotion of other products such as like over-the-counter drugs, compounded drugs, drugs for animals, dietary supplements, devices, even certain biological products. OPDP also doesn't regulate food or cosmetics. The promotion of these materials are regulated by other parts of CDER or other parts of FDA, for instance, places like Center for Biologics or CDRH, which is Center for Devices and Radiological Health. And even sometimes they're regulated by other agencies outside of the FDA, for instance, the Federal Trade Commission, known as FTC. So with the next few slides, I want to go over some of the types of promotion that you see and the basic requirements related to them. So generally, a promotional communication is subject to regulations under one of two buckets, labeling or advertising. The requirements for both types have many similarities, including the requirements to be truthful and also to be non-misleading. But additionally, in either case, labeling or advertising, the communication must be disseminated by or on behalf of the manufacturer. Also, FDA regulations give a non-exhaustive list of examples of both labeling and advertising, some of which I've listed here on this slide. A key difference in the requirements that apply between the two is that labeling needs to be accompanied by FDA-approved product labeling, which is the prescribing information and for short PI, while with advertising, it must contain a brief summary regarding the drug side effects, its contraindications, and effectiveness. In the case of broadcast advertising, the brief summary requirement may be fulfilled by making adequate provision for disseminating the product's approved labeling in connection with the ad. So as we go through the rest of the presentation, I will generally refer to advertising and promotional labeling as promotional communications. So as you can see on this chart, it kind of like gives you a better idea of the sheer volume of promotional communications that are submitted to OPDP at the time of initial dissemination by the pharmaceutical industry. So as you can see on here, in 2023 alone, OPDP received over 135,000 promotional pieces. The blue bar illustrates promotional pieces targeted at consumers, and the orange bar illustrates promotional pieces targeted at healthcare professionals. As you can see, the majority of the submissions which we receive are promotional pieces targeted at healthcare professionals. It is actually estimated that over 2/3 of promotional spending on the part of pharmaceutical companies is spent on promotion to healthcare professionals and not to direct to consumer promotion. So I want to take a minute to clear up some misconceptions regarding promotion that we often hear or come across. All of the bullet points that you actually see on this slide are actually false. So addressing the first misconception, which is that FDA legalized direct-to-consumer, or for short, we call DTC advertising, in the late 1990s, false. Rather, in the 1990s, the FDA developed guidance on means of providing the prescribing information, a brief summary with broadcast ads, and introduced the concept of the major statement of risk during ads in TV or radio format. And we'll talk about some examples later on in this presentation. Second misconception that people often have is that pharmaceutical industry spends most of its advertising budget on direct-to-consumer promotion. However, Although DTC promotion is more in the public eye through avenues such as television ads, the majority of industry funds, as I just mentioned before, which is 2/3, are actually directed towards healthcare professionals. You just have to remember that promotion can not only include written and printed materials. It can also include things such as like speaker programs or dinners, detailing from sales representatives in booths in exhibits at conferences, all of which are mostly directed towards healthcare professionals. A third misconception that we want to address is that FDA has the authority to ban DTC advertising. We actually don't. Such an action would actually require Congress and would need to meet constitutional standards. Another big misconception that is important to clear up is that FDA approves ads. This is absolutely not true. So while FDA regulates prescription drug advertising and promotion, this does not mean that we approve them. While firms are required to submit their ads to FDA prior to disseminating the piece, they're actually not required to obtain FDA's approval of the piece. In fact, the majority of promotional pieces that we see have already been disseminated or released out in the public. And then lastly, there's this misconception that FDA regulates good taste. We actually don't. Our focus is on the content of the promotional communication, particularly whether statements regarding the drug's safety and efficacy are truthful and not misleading. So now that we've cleared up some of the misconceptions regarding promotion, let's take a look at different types of promotional communications. So when we think of prescription drug advertising or promotion, we generally think of product claim communications, which are the most common. Product claim communications generally include the name of a drug, information about the approved indication and its benefits, as well as its risk. Examples include sales aid, journal ads, television ads, slide decks, product websites, mailing pieces that talk about a specific drug. So there are a few other categories of promotional communications. These are the help-seeking ads, institutional, or reminder promotional communications. In certain situations, these materials are not subject to the same requirements regarding disclosure of the product's effectiveness and the risk that we see for product claim communications. These types of materials are very limited in the amount and type of information they contain. For instance, help-seeking and institutional promotional materials do not make any representations about the product. Reminder ads, on the other hand, include specific product names, but they do not include representations or specific uses related to the product. We're going to go over a few examples in the next few slides. So as I mentioned earlier, the most common type of material that you see and are already familiar with is a product claim promotional communication. These include representations or suggestions related to the promoted drug product. So they do mention a specific drug product and they make claims regarding its use. The regulations require that these types of materials include a balanced presentation between the risk and benefit information, also known as fair balance. So balance depends on both the content of the information and how the information is presented. These types of promotional communications must also be accompanied by the PI or a brief summary based on whether it's considered advertising or promotional labeling, as I discussed earlier. So today, our focus is product claim ads. I definitely want to show you some examples so you can see how these categories look like. I'm going to show examples for print ad, but this information can also be extrapolated in a TV or radio format. So for our discussion, we are using a fictitious product from a fictitious firm. And in this case today, in this example, the drug's brand name is Arbitrea with a generic name of Miss Vastadium, and it comes in 100 milligram tablets. And this fictitious drug is manufactured by, we're going to say, Ace Pharmaceuticals, and it is indicated to treat seasonal allergy symptoms in adults. So let's see how this information could look in different promotional categories. So this is an example of a product claim piece directed to its consumers, or we'll say patients. It's a fictional print ad that you can find on FDA's website by searching for a sample prescription drug advertisement. So if you find this on our site, you can see next to all of the numbers that could be helpful in creating a product claim ad. However, for our benefit, I'm just going to point out some of the relevant numbers. So for instance, number 1 shows the drug's brand name and generic names. Next to number 2, you'll find the FDA-approved indication of the drug, in this case, for the treatment of seasonal allergy symptoms. Number 4 shows a fair balance of the drug's risk and benefit information. So we see that the drug can reduce allergy symptoms for up to 24 hours. But the ad also notes that the users may experience headaches, cold symptoms, as well as other symptoms while using the drug. Another type of communication that you may see is a reminder ad. These types of materials include the proprietary and the established names of the drug, also known as brand and generic names. They also include the dosage form, package content, like the price, the name of the manufacturer who packs the drug, and or who the distributor is. They do not include indications, dosage recommendations for use, or other written, printed, or graphic representations of the or suggestions related to the drug product. It's also important to note that reminder ads are not required to include risk information. Also, very importantly, I want to emphasize that reminder promotion is not permitted for drugs with box warnings. So box warnings are the types of warnings sometimes referred to as black box warnings. They appear on the prescription drugs label and are designed to call attention to serious or life-threatening risk. If a drug actually carries a box warning, it is the most prominent one in the label. So here's an example of a reminder piece for our fictional product. The reminder ads includes next to number 2, the brand and the generic names. And importantly, the ad does not describe the indication nor does it provide a dosage recommendation. So next, here's an example of a help-seeking ad. Next to number 2, you'll see that the ad provides symptoms of the indication. The ad also includes the name of the company. You can see that at number 4. But importantly, if you notice, nowhere does the ad make reference to a specific drug product. If it did include a specific drug name and was disseminated by or on behalf of the drug's manufacturer, packer, or distributor, this would be considered a product claim piece because the audience will now associate the drug with the use in seasonal allergies. So in essence, help seeking or disease awareness communications may also be subject to regulation by other governmental agencies, including the FTC. So our website at FDA does not include a fictional representation of an institutional ad, but for our sake, we created an example here using our fictitious drug and company name. So an institutional piece would include a company name, in our case, Ace Pharmaceuticals, and the areas of research, which would include seasonal allergies or perhaps any of the individual symptoms of seasonal allergies. As long as the ad was limited to those 2 areas, such an ad would not be subject to FDA's regulations. Instead, it will be regulated by the Federal Trade Commission, FTC. So broadcast advertising such as TV ads have slightly different rules. So I'm just going to take the liberty to point them out here. There are 2 main things that need to be included in a broadcast advertisement. First, information related to the major side effects and contraindications should be presented in the ad. This is referred to as the major statement. Secondly, since a broadcast ad is generally limited on time, sometimes 45 seconds or a minute or just a very short time, adequate provision is allowed in place of providing a PI or a brief summary in the broadcast ad itself. This provides ways for the audience to find the drug's PI, such as a website or a toll-free number. All right, so what does OPDP do? Now that we've reviewed the different types of promotional communications, we'll talk about what OPDP does. To carry out our mission of ensuring that the information contained in prescription drug promotion is truthful, balanced, and not misleading, we engage in a variety of tasks. We provide written comments to drug companies on proposed promotional communications that have not yet been disseminated to the public, as I mentioned earlier. Also, we advise other groups within the FDA on promotional issues. We pursue guidance and policy development. We also conduct social science research on how consumers and healthcare professionals process promotional information. And then finally, we conduct surveillance and compliance activities, and we'll talk about that later. So OPDP is constantly monitoring prescription drug promotion. And when we find false or misleading promotion, we are quite determined to take action on it. So as I touched on earlier, OPDP provides advice to industry and provides comments on proposed promotional communications. So generally, drug companies are not required to submit promotional materials for comment. It's voluntary in most cases, but also recommended actually by pharma guidelines. Companies often voluntarily submit launch promotional materials for new drugs or new indications. These communications are the first introduction of the product to the public and are used within the first 120 days post-approval. Sponsors also seek OPDP comments on direct-to-consumer broadcast ad given their pervasiveness. They also may choose to ask for a review of other important materials that are not categorized as launch. So if the product has been out for more than 120 days. So in limited cases, firms may be required to submit certain draft promotional communications before use. For example, those products that are approved under accelerated approval pathway. These companies must actually submit their marketing materials to OPDP prior to their first use, which is a pre-submission requirement. So surveillance is one of the other roles that OPDP plays, as I mentioned earlier. It's often what leads to our compliance activities. Our surveillance activities consist of reviewing promotional communications that are out in the public. Again, we should have a copy of all promotional pieces submitted to our office at the time of first use, but that doesn't always happen. We also attend major medical conferences and check out what's going on in the exhibit halls at these conferences. OPDP also monitors drug promotion on the internet and social media that are developed by companies such as their product website or their Facebook page. We also review complaints submitted by industry competitors, submissions or reports that we get from consumers or healthcare professionals as yourself. So industry competitors often provide tips regarding some of the clearest and concerning violative promotional materials. As a matter of fact, no one better understands or follows the competitive market than a rival. So now I want to spend a little time discussing some of the common violations that OPDP sees in promotion. This slide and the next few slides will list some of those violations. So first, promotional communications may make claims that are not appropriately supported. They also may misrepresent data from studies or make claims suggesting that the drug is more efficacious than what is actually supported. Continuing on violations, in terms of a drug's risk information, materials that omit or minimize the risk information about a drug are other types of commonly observed violations. Such violations could include either a complete omission of risk in a piece, or it could actually be a minimization of risk by not including the important warnings and precautions about the drug. Promotional materials may also omit material facts about the drug product. As an example of this type of violation might include omitting the full approved indication for the drug product or omitting the limitations of use if the drug has any, as described in the FDA approved PI. Also, promotional materials may also fail to present a fair balance between the risk and the benefit information. An example of this type of violation might be if a website, for instance, contains bold and highly visible benefit information with colorful graphics about a drug, yet it only provides risk information in very small, non-contrasting font at the very bottom of the same website. Such a website, in essence, would lack fair balance because it failed to present information relating to the risk of the drug with the similar prominence and readability, pretty much that's comparable to the presentation of the benefit information about that drug. And therefore, we would consider that misleading. So while what we have listed on here on the screen is not an exhaustive list, we believe that highlighting the most common observed violations is useful to help ensure that healthcare professionals and patients and consumers can identify potentially false or misleading promotional materials for prescription drugs. So our office conducts several surveillance activities. However, there are limitations that do exist. These surveillance activities don't allow us to monitor drug promotions in settings such as healthcare professional offices, like local dinner programs that are hosted or at promotional speaker sessions. So as I mentioned before, promotions can take many forms other than the sales aids or TV ads or print journal ad, for instance. So as a result, we created the Bad Ad program to help fill these gaps in our surveillance activities and to also help to educate healthcare professionals on how to recognize when an ad is false or there is misleading promotion. So the Bad Ad program is an FDA-sponsored outreach program targeted at healthcare professionals, including physicians, nurses, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, pharmacists, all who either prescribe medications or otherwise help make selection decisions about the use of prescription drugs for patients. So specifically, the Bad Ad program is designed to help healthcare professionals understand the role that they play in helping FDA ensure that prescription drug promotion is truthful and not misleading. I know you've heard those two words quite a bit through this presentation, and you'll continue to hear them. So essentially, the program's mission is twofold. First, it is to help healthcare professionals recognize misleading prescription drug promotion through education and research. And then secondly, it is to provide an easy way to report potential violations to our office so that further investigation can be had. In terms of education, we realize that the pharmaceutical industry is spending billions of dollars, like I mentioned earlier in the presentation, on promotion. Yet, we recognize also that many healthcare professionals are not necessarily trained on how to sort through all of this promotion. So with the Bad Ad program, we've done a few things to help educate healthcare providers. They include educational online course, actual case studies from prior compliance actions that OPDP has taken, and through our outreach efforts via conferences and media campaigns that we do. So now, what should you do if you actually see promotion that you consider potentially false or misleading? Simply enough, when you spot an instance of potential false or misleading drug promotion, you can report it to FDA using the number that you see on the screen, which is 855-RX-BAD-AD, or by sending an email to the address you see here on the screen, badad@fda.gov, so that FDA can look into the concern. We want you to know that you can submit a report anonymously, but we do encourage you to include contact information so that we can follow up if more information is needed. Also, when you report a complaint, we ask that you be as detailed as possible, including the name of the drug, when it occurred, and what the potential misleading promotion consisted of. We also ask that you report it in a timely fashion, as we would pay particular attention to recent and potentially ongoing violations. So what will OPDP do with your complaint? So once a report is filed, OPDP will evaluate it to determine if the promotion warrants further FDA action. If OPDP considers the promotion to be in violation, we will move forward with work to bring the sponsor to come into compliance via a letter. These letters provide the sponsor with a notice of the alleged violation and request that they discontinue use of the violative promotion. We may also refer it to criminal investigation through the FDA's Office of Criminal Investigation or the Department of Justice. So even if the promotional material cited in the report is not subject to a compliance letter, it's encouraging to know that it still serves as a valuable information in focusing our ongoing surveillance activities. So we encourage individuals like yourself to report any promotion that you feel may be false or misleading. By doing so, you can truly help make a difference in helping us to ensure that prescription drug promotion is truthful, it is accurate, and it's also not misleading. So I want to take the next few minutes to walk you through two examples of warning letters that we previously issued to companies. Our first warning letter is for a drug called Zopamist oral spray. OPDP reviewed a webpage titled Product Information for Zopamist, as well as exhibit panels that appeared in the main exhibit hall at a national medical conference. And as we go through the example today, just wanted to point out that I will only be addressing the Zopamist webpage. However, I just want you to note that the webpage and the exhibit panels had similar issues. So as background, the FDA-approved indication for Zopamist is for the short-term treatment of insomnia characterized by difficulties with sleep initiation. Zolpidem tartrate has been shown to decrease sleep latency for up to 35 days in controlled clinical studies. The clinical trials performed in support of efficacy were about 4 to 5 weeks in duration, with the final formal assessments of sleep latency performed at the end of the treatment. So the prescribing information for Zopamist includes several warnings and precautions, such as CNS depressant effects and next day impairment, as well as severe anaphylactic and anaphylactoid reactions. In addition, most of the common adverse reactions with Zopamist includes drowsiness, dizziness, diarrhea, and drug fillings. So we're going to stay on this slide for a little while. So here is the webpage OPDP reviewed. It's a copy of it. And you will notice that there are several claims that imply superiority of Zopimist, which includes, I'm going to read them out loud. First one is Zopimist is engineered to outperform the oral tablets. Another one is using a proprietary and patented technology, we deliver the drug as a fine mist into the mucosal membranes lining the cheeks in the mouth, buccal delivery. This mode of delivery offers some very clear advantages as compared to other delivery methods. And then another one I wanted to point out is that fast onset of action. Zopimist induces sleep 3 times faster than oral tablets, 10 minutes as compared to 30 to 40 minutes for oral tablets. So in our communication to the firm, we stated that, and I quote, these claims misleadingly suggest that Zopimist is clinically superior in efficacy to oral zolpidem products because of its formulation and mode of delivery. No references were cited to support these claims, and the FDA is not aware of evidence to support them. In fact, Zopimist was approved as a 505(b)(2) product and demonstrated bioequivalence and not superior efficacy to Ambien, a zolpidem oral product in healthy young individuals. In our letter, we also stated that there is a claim that there is no food effect that mitigates the efficacy of other zolpidem products. This claim is misleading because, to the contrary, the dosage and administration section of the PI states that the effect of Zopimist may be slowed by ingestion or with or immediately after a meal. Additionally, according to the clinical pharmacology section of the Zopimist PI, the results of a food effect crossover study suggest that, as with all zolpidem products, Zopimist should not be administered with or immediately after a meal. So pointing out another violation, you'll also notice on this webpage, a copy of it. It includes the following claims. I'm going to read them out loud. The first one is Zopimist, in parentheses, zolpidem tatrate, is a patented FDA-approved bioequivalent version of the market-leading sleep aid Ambien. And also it lists zolpidem is the most commonly prescribed agent for the treatment of insomnia. So in our letter to the firm, we stated these presentations are misleading because they fail to include material information regarding the FDA-approved indication for Zopimist. Specifically, the webpage omits material information that zolpidem is indicated for the short-term treatment of insomnia characterized by difficulties with sleep initiation. It has been shown to decrease sleep latency for up to 35 days in controlled clinical studies. And the clinical trials performed in support of efficacy were 4 to 5 weeks in duration, with the final formal assessment of sleep latency performed at the end of the treatment. We also stated in our letter that, and finally, the webpage includes claims and or representations about the efficacy of Zopimist. However, it fails to communicate any risk information. By omitting the risks associated with Zopimist, the webpage fails to provide material information about the consequences that may result from the use of the drug and creates a misleading impression about the drug's safety. This misleading presentation is especially problematic from a public health perspective, given the serious and potentially life-threatening risks associated with the drug. So in essence, as implied here, the FDA issued a warning letter for this Zopimist webpage. And as a result, the sponsor for the drug stopped using the webpage and distributed an important correction of drug information letter to correct this violative messages cited in the warning letter. And also, in addition, the sponsor of the drug stopped using other promotional pieces for Zopimist that contain similar claims and presentations. So here's another example of a compliance action that we took regarding a social media post for a drug called Diglegis. Although this promotion was not directly aimed at healthcare professionals, it's an interesting example as the use of social media in prescription drug promotion continues to grow. We actually received several complaints to the bad ad program regarding this particular post that I'm going to share. And after reviewing the alleged complaints and posts, we issued a warning letter to the drug sponsor to give them notice of our concern and prompt them to stop the misleading promotion. So again, I'm going to provide background. On this drug, the FDA-approved indication for Diglegis is for the treatment of nausea and vomiting of pregnancy in women who do not respond to conservative management. The indication also has a limitation of use that the drug has not been studied in women with hyperemesis gravidarum Important to note, diagnosis is also associated with a number of contraindications and warnings as stated in the PI. Specifically, diagnosis is contraindicated in women with known hypersensitivity to doxylamine succinate, other ethanolamine derivative antihistamines, peroxidine hydrochloride, or any inactive ingredient in the formulation, as well as in women who are taking MEO inhibitors. So in addition, the PI for diagnosis includes warning and precautions regarding activities requiring mental alertness and concomitant medical conditions. And also the most common reaction reported with diagnosis was somnolence. So here is a copy of the social media post that was the subject of the warning letter. First and foremost, this post features Kim Kardashian, who's quite known, and she does have a large number of followers on her social media platforms. So pretty much any post by her has the potential to reach millions of people. As a result, we were very concerned from a public health perspective when we came across her misleading post regarding diagnosis. So the post claims, and I read out loud, OMG, have you heard about this? As you guys know, my hashtag morning sickness has been pretty bad. I tried changing things about my lifestyle, like my diet, but nothing helped. So I talked to my doctor. He prescribed me hashtag diagnosis, and I felt a lot better. And most importantly, it's been studied and there was no increased risk to the baby. I'm so excited and happy with my results that I'm partnering with the Shady USA to raise awareness about treating morning sickness. If you have morning sickness, be safe and be sure to ask your doctor about the pill with the pregnant woman on it. And find out more, www.diagnosis.com and another website, www.diagnosis.importantsafetyinfo.com. So the primary violation that we were concerned with here was that the post discussed the benefits of the drug, but failed to communicate any risk information associated with its use. So as we mentioned earlier, by omitting the risks associated with the drug, the social media post misleadingly failed to provide material information about the consequences that may result from the use of the drug. And it also suggested that it is safer than has been demonstrated. So again, as I mentioned before, omitting or downplaying risk information is one of the most common violations that we see in promotional materials. So also the post was misleading because it failed to provide material information regarding diagnosis indication. Specifically, it failed to include the limitation of use, which I mentioned earlier, which stated that diagnosis has not been studied in women with hyperemesis gravidarum. So these violations led us to issuing a warning letter to the drug sponsor. Subsequently, the company ceased the use of the material and also published corrective messaging through Kim Kardashian's social media accounts. So these are just a couple of examples of compliance letters that OPDP has sent. And if you want to find more examples of warning letters or entitled letters that OPDP has issued, you can visit FDA's website and do a search. And again, for your awareness and for your information, this is or these are the bad ad contact information that you can reach out to. Those are the references. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining us. I hope that you've learned a little bit about how to recognize and report false or misleading promotion and how OPDP protects the public health with our mission and role within the FDA. And I'm not sure if we have time, Kara, for questions.
And thank you, Lieutenant Commander Adejuan. All right, we'll take probably just one question for now, Sola. So let's see. Does OPDP ever contact the person who submitted a complaint during an investigation? If so, why?
Thank you for that question. We would contact the person only if we needed additional information. Maybe, for instance, we just needed more information to investigate. We would contact that person. But again, people can also report anonymously, but it's also always quite helpful if contact information is provided. But that is kept that is kept confidential.
Thank you. Maybe we can squeeze one more in. Can someone report anonymously?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, anonymous complaints often alert OPDP to potential problems. However, complaints accompanied by names and contact information are helpful in cases in which OPDP needs to follow up for more information.
All right. Thank you so much, Sola. Sorry we're out of time. If you have questions that we did not have time to address today, please email them to our Division of Drug Information email address at druginfo@fda.hhs.gov for assistance. If you need more CEs for your license renewals this year, please check out our list of home studies CE webinars at www.fda.gov/DDI webinars. This concludes our activity for today. The FDA appreciates your participation in this webinar, and we hope that you will join us again in the future.